Boots! 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 My name is Matthew Kroll, and there's no discussion in the war.
My name is Shahir Dowd.
This is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film 28 Years Later.
By logical conclusion, will the next one be 28 decades later?
I guess, but they skipped months.
Yeah. Also, decades later gets into real science fiction territory at this point, right?
Real science fiction.
You're talking about 280 years at this point.
Yeah.
Where will the British Kingdom be?
I don't know. Well, this one's a three-peat, remember? So,
yes, Nia DaCosta, who directed Candyman, is coming in to do the second one, which I believe has actually been shot already. There was a handoff at the end of this film that kind of leads into that, which we will inevitably have to talk about.
I believe so.
Yeah, but and oddly, you've seen the original too, right? 28 Days and Weeks.
Yeah, yes. Although I will say this, I remember so little of Weeks.
Yeah.
Me and Patrick Williams went to go see 28 Years Later this morning. Mm-hmm. And then we were chatting about it. We were recounting things. And I have a great story about 28 Days Later and seeing it, which I'll tell here. But when we got to 28 Weeks, I was like, I don't remember it. And he had just watched it again. He hadn't seen it forever. So I got a download of what happened from him. But I know I saw it.
So, 28 Days Later came out I know you love those, but just as I was starting to teach production at film school, and obviously It was inevitably the film that we would talk about because of the fact that it was shot on the Canon XL1, which is a camera that all our students had access to at that point.
Shahir.
Yeah.
Shahir, holy shit. So you're telling a story about teaching film school.
Yeah.
This movie came out and I experienced it while I was a counselor at a media camp.
Right.
It's almost like we're getting closer. We're getting closer to homeostasis.
A camp counselor? What? Oh.
Listen, we had super talented kids from film, video, graphic design, and computer arts. Yeah. And it was dope. Yeah. I saw this movie during a field trip out to a place during the weekends because we take the kids somewhere fun. They wanted to go to the mall or whatever, maybe see a movie, etc. This was
how old were these kids, by the way?
It was all different. It was I think 13 to 18 at
you took a 13-year-old to 28 Days Later?
No, you goober. Only the older ones did, but no one actually wanted to go see that. Everyone wanted to do other stuff, which is fine. So I had a span of 2 hours where I got to go to the movies. And what happened was this. I saw 28 Days Later in a completely empty theater.
Oh, really?
And let me tell you, that is how that film should be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about Danny Boyle a long time ago. It was like episode 30 or something like that. When we did Trainspotting 2. We have not done a Danny Boyle film since then.
I know. I was looking into him, and I was like, oh, I've seen a bunch of him stuff, right? Since then, and nope.
So a lot's happened since that time. It's been 400 and something episodes since then.
Yeah. We did yesterday.
No, we didn't. Well, I didn't do yesterday. I wasn't on it.
You weren't on that one?
No, because I haven't seen that film. That's the Beatles movie that where nobody remembers the Beatles, right?
Yeah.
No,
did we do that?
No, it wasn't me. If you did do it, I wasn't on it.
I'm looking it up. All this stuth doesn't never know.
And I'm only saying that because I have not seen that film.
No, I guess we didn't do it. I have a memory of doing it, but maybe it's the Springsteen movie.
Yeah, we definitely did the Springsteen movie.
Okay,
I forgot what the Springsteen movie was called. Anyway,
well, I'm sorry for this tangent that went nowhere.
You can tell how old we are by the way we're talking. By the way,
man,
it's just like I remember a time when we talked about Danny Boyle. It was years ago.
We're re-uploading our 10-year-old podcast to YouTube's.
Anyway, Danny Boyle rules and has been around for a while and is a formative filmmaker for me for the film Trainspotting. I absolutely adore Trainspotting. It was like it hit at the exact right moment for me. And I think there was a language to filmmaking that Danny Boyle kind of dropped into with Shallow Grave and Trainspotting that was perfectly suited to him, especially and A Life Less Ordinary as well, which is that it really came out of, it felt like it came out of like the electronic music scene in the UK. The filmmaking style was really percussive and the editing ideas were really unusual, but really worked with the music in those films in particular. Again, I love Trainspotting. If you haven't seen Trainspotting, it is absolutely one of the most formative films for me. Then he continued to experiment with films like 28 Days Later, again shot on the Canon XL1, which is a camera that I have used, doing some amazing things where they emptied out the streets of London, and then kind of gave us fast zombies as well, and then moved on to Oscar fame and glory with things like Slumdog Millionaire. Of course, there are movies in between this as well, and I think the last great one for me was 127 Hours, the James Franco film. Again, I said this on that previous episode, and I'll say it again here, is that you could give two completely different filmmakers the exact same piece of music and the exact same footage, and there's something about the way Danny Boyle will do it, which is a way that nobody else can do. And I think it has to do with the inherent ability to understand music the way he does, but also because he has, in my mind, kind of a artistic curiosity about how to put things together in a way that very few people do. And, you only have to look at the end of Trainspotting with the Underworld track Born Slippy, the end of 127 Hours with the Sigur Rós song. And then we have to talk about the way that music and editing is kind of done in this particular film, which was shot on, iPhones, as it's famously talked about. But, this is just suffice to say, Danny Boyle does things only Danny Boyle can do. And I'm always in awe of it. I'm always sort of enraptured by it. And it's interesting to sort of think about it in terms of like other filmmakers who are at the same caliber as him. I'm reading books about David Fincher right now, who are much more formalist and much more like tightly reined, whereas Danny Boyle seems to be like really throwing ideas at the wall and just seeing what sticks. And it just so happens that in most cases things stick, and even if they stick in unusual ways. So I love Danny Boyle, and it was so much fun to go see this in a movie theater. We talked about this in that Trainspotting episode, but how do you feel about Mr. Boyle, the Olympics director?
That's right. I know. I overall enjoyed the stuff that I've seen. Obviously, Slumdog, as you said, 127 Hours. But I other than I never saw Steve Jobs.
It's fantastic. The ending, musically brilliant.
Yeah. Trainspotting 2 or T2 was fine.
I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I give him a pass.
I did want to see. No, I did. And I did see yesterday. I did see it. I remember liking it.
Mm-hmm. I've heard it's not his best work.
No, it's fine. It's serviceable. It feels a little bit less like everything else. I have not seen I haven't seen Pistol. I haven't seen the Matrix Now for Your Mind thing. He does a TV special.
And he's been doing TV shows for a little bit as well. And he's got the film Trance as well, the other one that I have.
Yeah. So I like, normally when I see stuff he's done, I really like him, but he's one of those known names that is not something that ever comes to the forefront for me. But when you say his name, I'm like, oh yeah, great. I instantly get a dopamine hit of, I like their work, right? Mm-hmm. It's good. So I was pumped to see 28 Years Later. And it's funny, while I didn't remember 28 weeks, I also in my brain was convinced there was a 28 months.
Sure.
And there wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I sort of diving back into this universe was quite fun. And I like, even though these days the rage zombie, the fast zombie is not as transformative to the genre as it was back when 28 Days came out. I think this is still one of the, I really like this world. I like the geopolitics that is hinted at. I'll call it geopolitical lore. Right. Because the stories don't, and if I remember correctly from, again, what Patrick Williams told me the plot for Weeks was, that one gets a bit more into what's going on around in the world, more, the geopolitics are more at the fore of the story. Yeah. This I like because the society, the town or whatever that has the cool little tide drawbridge, basically is essentially the village. Yeah. Right. But in this quarantined Great Britain.
Yeah.
And they see ships. They're like, oh, it must be the French, or whoever. We eventually meet Scandinavian, Swedish.
I think.
Yeah. Soldier. And I liked how you got a hint at what the world was by the time that happened, and that gave it a nice like different twist of like, this is a thing by either choice or by force that these people live this way. And they don't even get into like the why or the how or what. But I appreciate in these zombie stories when, no matter if it's like geopolitical lore or like what caused it or whatever, oftentimes when you answer a lot of those questions, it gets less interesting.
Yeah.
Because the interesting story is not how did the virus start? It's how are human beings dealing with the new norm, the new reality of this world that is now forever changed from what we in real life currently understand.
Yeah, of course. Night of the Living Dead is really about the remnants of people that have been left behind. And one of the weakest episodes of The Walking Dead is when they explained how the virus, began
exactly.
in the first season. Yeah,
and obviously, Night of the Living Dead being the progenitor of all this. I think we've talked about this before, but I don't quite know. Obviously, everyone knows that it is also like a stand-in of like who are the monsters.
Yeah, of course.
And that could be a stand-in for any kind of bigotry, racism, etc., depending on where you're looking at it from. I think Night of the Living Dead. It would be actually kind of interesting at some point if we just wanted to do a bonus episode or something on Night of the Living Dead, because that is a film that I think more than I give it credit for was more formulative for me than a lot of like cinema of my time growing up. I feel like I incorporated and internalized the craft and the meaning of Night of the Living Dead more than Evil Dead, right? It just feels like it's seminal.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm actually not a big zombie film guy, as we talked about on our episode last week. Romantic comedies are my zombie films.
That's right.
Yeah, but again, I'm always there for either Danny Boyle or anyone who's doing interesting film work. I will argue that Zack Snyder's best film is his remake of Dawn of the Dead.
It is.
It is. 100%.
It absolutely is.
It absolutely is his best film.
And I don't mind the Vegas one, the Netflix Vegas one.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
I don't remember the name of it.
It's terrible.
Army of the Dead?
Yeah, Army of the Dead. Yeah, the idea of a Ocean's 11 style heist in the middle of Vegas during a zombie apocalypse does sound cool, doesn't it? But at any rate, the other factor with the 28 series, I guess, not to be confused with the Sandra Bullock film, is that it was also the not the debut, but also.
Wait, are you equating it to 27 Dresses?
No, the 28 days later, I think, or 28 Days, which was the Sandra Bullock film about alcoholism. That everyone kind of makes a joke about.
I didn't even know.
Well, there you go. This is the useless trivia I keep in my brain for no reason whatsoever. But as I was mentioning, this is also the kind of one of the larger Alex Garland projects before he kind of burst onto the scene with also after. Before this, writing The Beach, which was both the novel and the film adaptation, and then becoming the filmmaker that we know and love today. So it's kind of fun to see these two re-team up for this. Now, just on a production level, by the way, write us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. If anything we've been talking about in terms of our old age prognostication and trying to remember things, please write us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or go to our YouTube page where we are uploading older episodes, including, have we gotten up to the Trainspotting episode by this point?
That's a great question. I don't believe so. I believe. Oh, you know what just got re-uploaded? And we're releasing one a day over there.
Yeah.
Jurassic World, baby. How timely.
Oh yeah. Are you going to go see the new one?
Probably. I won't subject you to that.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here.
So please, say hi to us over there. Leave comments. If you see a short, comment on it. Say something about it. It helps the algorithm. Also, let it loop once. We've talked to you about this before, but it actually, especially if you love this show and you'd like to support us and you cannot afford to do anything monetary, which is totally fine, doing that is insanely helpful. Yeah. Like even one person doing it is insanely helpful. So that's one way you can
maybe
help
we'll start a Patreon and go back and do 28 Days Later. Or the Sandra Bullock film.
Maybe we'll start a Patreon to make 28 months later.
Yeah, there you go. So the world building in this particular film kind of originates from this one single idea of a man waking up in the middle of a beautiful London morning to realize that the world around him has been decimated while he was in an induced coma. And then we realize that there are these rage rage virus zombies kind of in the world.
We're not supposed to say the word zombie in this movie.
I don't think the word zombie
right?
exists. Yeah.
But
the rage virus certainly exists. And then the interesting thing that has happened since 2002 or 2001 when 28 Days Later came out is that we have now gone through a global pandemic. So the meaning of these films have entirely changed given that we have seen something akin to the 1918 flu pandemic. Now, I also just wanted to, maybe piggybacking off of what Patrick mentioned about 28 weeks later. The geopolitics of that film were less interesting to me than this one single idea in that movie, which is when the character Robert Carlyle plays, basically makes a sort of human decision to run away as his wife is being attacked by zombies instead of helping her. And then, which is, terrifying but understandable because of what's happening in the world. And we realize that there is actually a practical reason why he made that decision, which is that he has two other children that are still alive, and he kind of makes the decision that he needs to live, and there's no saving her. But then, as the movie progresses, and the spoiler for that is that she comes back and she's still alive and she's not been turned into a rage monster. And I've always found with that particular film, that is the thing that I remember the most, is that weird little dilemma of having abandoned your wife only to realize, presuming that she is dead, only to come back and realize she's still alive and having to answer to the moral dilemma of how do you live with yourself in that scenario? I think that's fantastic, by the way.
The 90s sitcom potential of someone sleeping on the couch tonight.
Yeah, the doghouse is certainly open. And then, as mentioned as well, from a production point of view, something that's been really touted about this film is that it is shot entirely on iPhones. I always take that conversation about the cameras with a little bit of a grain of salt because as we've kind of seen, if you go and look at any behind the scenes footage from this film, it is often the case that while the recording body might be an iPhone, there is $100,000 worth of glass right in front of it, as well as the actual, millions of dollars of production that goes in front of the camera that has nothing to do with the camera itself. And then realizing as well that there's an entire back-end production to this, which is a production pipeline which takes what is ostensibly a consumer home format and turns it into a fully fledged cinema workflow that needs to be taken into account. So, yes, it was shot on the iPhone, but take that with a grain of salt.
But we couldn't go in the woods with our iPhone 17s or whatever they're up to now and make this thing. There's actual still production muscle behind it.
The thing is that Apple actually makes that argument more than Danny Boyle does.
Oh, sure.
Apple makes that argument whenever they release something. I think they did something with David Leitch, where they shot a sort of home snowball fight and made it really cinematic. And then, was this with the sort of intention, hey, your camera is a super cinematic device. But, that short that they made was a very expensive short. And the thing that I think Boyle is more interested in is the aesthetics of the actual device itself. And in the way that the XL1 kind of gave the sort of, I wouldn't say documentary quality of it, but a sort of realistic quality to 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
This iPhone quality is actually very surreal. There are moments where it is pristine and beautiful in the way that iPhones are optimized to capture landscapes. And then there are moments when it is grungy and crappy when you realize iPhones can't capture nighttime scenes very well.
Yep.
And this is, one of my 2 cents about this film is that it is far, far, far weirder than I think most people are going to be expecting.
Yeah.
It is a weird movie.
It's a strange film.
And you know what? I loved it.
Nice.
I loved the weirdness of it all.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't know where I'm going to say what this movie is about. Loved it for its weirdness, but the Internet Movie Database, I can't speak today, says that 28 years later is a group of survivors of the rage virus live on a small island. When one of the group leaves the island on a mission into the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but other survivors.
And given us the biggest dong of the year.
Also the biggest dong of the year. Congratulations to that alpha. Yeah. Salute.
I know. Have you seen any of the memes about the dong?
No.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Dong memes don't really hit my feed.
Oh, really?
I don't know. Yeah.
I get a lot of dong memes.
No. All right. Well, that's fine.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Well, I'll tell you what I think about the Internet Movie Database description. I think it's pretty solid. I like it. It feels like it doesn't give anything away, but you get the vibe. I'll even forgive one of the ending things of it that I think is a little inaccurate, because I think it also just kind of gives that good feeling of what the movie's going to do. What did I think of this movie? I liked it a lot. It is one of those films, however, that has a lot of dents in the armor. And I think, and I'll go sort of through what I think those are for me. Some of them are things that I have said are pet peeves of mine in movies on this podcast for a while. Others, I think, might be new. I think the interesting part, and why I will still land on I enjoyed this movie and I think it is an excellent film, is that in spite of those things that normally turn me into a rage zombie, it kept getting me back on board so easy when I was knocked off the horse. That doesn't take away from the 2 or 3 times I was knocked off the horse, and we'll talk about that. But easily 5 minutes later, I'm like, I don't care. Like it just wasn't. It's a really great film that was not a smooth ride for me. I never felt lost in the movie. I enjoyed it though. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, as I mentioned, it's a very weird film. It starts as a kind of father-son in the apocalypse kind of relationship film about a father teaching his son how to hunt. We've realized that the best way with the rage virus, or with the remnants of the rage virus as we cross the causeway through high tide, is the use of of bows and arrows. And Spike, the young boy who's only 12 in question, is learning to apply the theory that his father, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, has given him in a real situation. But compounded with that, there is Jodie Comer, played in The Bedroom Above, who has some kind of inklings of a virus that we don't quite understand.
Isla.
And when we go through that story, it is really compelling, because Spike is a really interesting character, and the dilemmas, kind of just as I mentioned with 28 months later, or weeks later, are really compelling. But then the movie turns, and it turns on a dime. And when we start to even get into, there's a sort of Heart of Darkness quality to this. The apocalypse now going up the river to try and find the wise man. It gets really, really weird.
Well,
and I loved it. And I loved it for that, because I think, again, as a filmmaker, Boyle is not only curious about how to put his audience through interesting situations, but he's also like really experimental at times. And we both quoted at the beginning the Rudyard Kipling poem Boots, which is used percussively throughout the film, while intercutting old footage of English archers as they're learning during wartime.
Well, yeah, I mean, also Phil, like cinema clips and actual soldiers, like all different. That's the 1915 one read by Taylor Holmes.
Yeah,
which has been used
and then,
in a couple of
the fascinating story about that, I don't know if you read this part, is that was not actually in the original cut of the film, but it was when they first got, when Boyle and Garland were watching the first trailer, which was sent to them, which used that poem. They were like, oh my God, that's genius. We should use that in the movie. And
it's so funny that you say that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
This brings me to my first pain point.
Okay.
I think the first 10 minutes of this movie are kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm. I would not describe it. I would not disagree with all over the place.
That's the third song in 10 minutes that we hear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Like, it felt so like, and maybe that's the vibe you want to get, but it was so juxtaposed to like the calm, cool village.
Yeah.
That, by the time they finish the song and they're on the mainland and they're dealing with their first kill or whatever, I was like, is this going to be this the entire time? God, I hope not. And then it wasn't. And I very much appreciated that.
It jumps in and out of that style. And I just attribute this to this very, ephemeral fact that what Boyle does, very few people can do. And I really mean that, which is that you can give someone a great song to put at the end of the film and they won't do it as well as Danny Boyle can do it.
Sure.
And so the film was also scored by Young Fathers, whose band I actually discovered a couple of years ago. And then I realized we have something in common with Young Fathers, which is that they did a track with Massive Attack, which they had a music video for called Blood in the what was it called? Blood in the Eye? Voodoo in the Blood, sorry. Which is a music video that I recommended to you, and then I think you were working on a show about music videos where you showed it to somebody else for a clip as well. I freaking love that music video.
I think Voodoo Blood we used. We used it in the show. We used it in a show called Vidiots.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you showed it to Akash Singh. Was that right?
Yeah. Because he was one of the comics on the couch that was Beavis and Buttheading it, basically.
Yeah. And I think I watched that because I love that music video. It's sort of based on a Andrzej Zulawski film, Possession, which is fantastic. But yeah, Young Fathers with the singer, did that song with Massive Attack. And so the score to this is really, really brilliant as well. Again, Boyle, so that musicality to the film, the sort of percussiveness, that strangeness of it, I think is really something that he does well. And I think another filmmaker would not have done that as interestingly. And to me, I'm always kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt because there'll be moments within that which just really send me singing, they really make me soar in terms of watching a film and going, Jesus, I don't know how this guy's doing this or how this is all coming together, but it really is coming together. He does that. It does feel like a slightly experimental lens.
The first 10 minutes feels that way very much. I will say this though,
experimental and pop at the same time.
Yeah, I think more experimental than pop for me. Yeah. But I will say something that I didn't quite realize was a huge fear/phobia of mine. They hit right at the beginning. And I think I have a deep-seated fear of terrible things happening while happy media is playing.
Oh,
so at the Teletubbies? Well, at the beginning, it's the kids hiding from the rage virus when it first happens, and the Teletubbies is on the TV. Yeah. And I don't know if you get like this, Shahir, or people out there email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, but when your brain goes to just weird places when you're alone watching a TV.
Yeah.
I'll be watching Friends or Deep Space Nine or something. And I'm if something awful happened right now, it would be so disconcerting and awkward, any type of awful.
Yeah.
And I've often think would I ever be able to watch something joyous again? I go down these spiral things. So when I knew that was going to happen from the trailer, but I had forgotten. And so when it opened with that, I'm oh, you're putting me at a very large place of unease very early. Good on you, Danny Boyle.
And he murders children right at the beginning of this movie. There are children who meet their untimely demise and become rage monsters within the first few minutes of this movie.
And except for the one.
Except for Jimmy, who we will talk about in a little bit. I loved that. And then everything that this film did from that point on really landed for me. A sort of late third appearance of Ralph Fiennes is always a welcome salve for me.
Best part.
And he's doing a sort of Colonel Kurtz covered in iodine. And there's an oddly, strangely heartfelt resolve to one of those key storylines about Spike and his mother, which the movie kind of just stops being a zombie film for a while and becomes a really sort of potent meditation on death and the meaning of death and why death matters.
Yeah. I have a couple things I want to talk about before we get there, because I feel like that truly, for me, what you've just described is the meat and potatoes and what elevated this from it's fine to holy shit, this is brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a couple of the other things I didn't like about it. So, small one, again, these are all just dense and I got over them quicker than I normally do. But I think I've talked about this before. So Spike, the young actor who plays Spike, did excellent. Alfie Williams, I thought was phenomenal. But the script, it did the thing that I feel always knocks me out of movies where they just constantly keep it seems only Spike, but they just always say Spike's name in every sentence where they reference to Tim. And like, after a while, it got to the point I'm like, people don't talk like this. And it with the rest of the world feeling so fleshed out, like I wanted to feel lost in this village and then the relationship and everything. But like every third word out of Aaron Taylor Johnson's name was Spike. Right. And I'm like, I'm not buying any relationship you have right now. It's like you're reading a character name. It's not even the acting. I think he acted great. It kept knocking me for a loop when I wanted this thing to wash over me, and it kept being like, ow. Again, not a deal breaker.
One thing I wondered was the language, because like it's a very thick Upper English / Scottish accent, and I wondered. There were moments where I was like, I'm struggling to keep up with the way that the language is being used here. I wondered how an American audience would play with this, or would.
I understood every word fine. I understood it too clear because I heard Spike's name 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And then I like okay. This is the weird part that I was having trouble coming to terms until I actually talked with Patrick about it a little bit. So there's a turn in the movie after they get back. There's a big party for Spike because he got his first kill, and his dad, Jamie, Aaron Taylor Johnson, is exaggerating what happened. He's making it bigger. He calls him the giant killer when in fact he did get one kill, but it was a slow one. And also then he kept missing when they were in trouble. Right. Like, and that doesn't sit well with Spike. Spike's mom is sick somehow. And you don't really know why. So he leaves the party, but beforehand he sees some infidelity with his dad. So he starts to not trust his dad. There's a big conflict with the dad about he thinks he wants his mom to die. I think those moments are all played so brilliantly. Mm-hmm. And then the decision to leave to go to the wise man on the other side to hopefully find a cure for, there's a doctor that they could go and maybe his mom could be saved. Mm-hmm. I think that's a solid plot point. Yeah. I don't think the movie does a good job setting up the world enough to have that like mythical doctor like make total narrative sense as to what is happening, and it's cut together very quickly as they do it.
Yeah.
I love the beat. This is where the story should go. I felt like it was presented to me as just a matter of fact, and I didn't ever feel like it was kind of earned to get the pivot to happen. Like the way that Spike finds out that there's a doctor is that he talks to the guy who was sort of like watching his mom as they were at the party, and he mentions it offhand because they saw a fire in the distance. It's like,
it's his father that he's talking to. It was his grandfather that he's talking to, though. Right?
Is that his? No, that's not his grandfather. That's just like a guy. That's not the grandfather of. That's not. No, they're not related.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because we don't know the grandfather, because the grandfather like there's a thing with grandfathers in it, because Spike's mom confuses Spike with his grandfather a lot, and that I think is completely different. I think this is just a villager guy who like restrung a bow for him. Like it was a friend of the family, right? And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's Dr. Kelson. I don't want to talk to you about it because it's your dad and like whatever." And then he confronts his dad about the doctor and everything. But what we don't know in this, because I don't want to put words in Patrick's mouth, but he's like, yeah, but this is like a totally kid thing to do. Of course the kid's going to go run off and try to do this. He's 12. Like that makes total sense. I'm like, it does. But what got me was I don't know enough. Like what the movie presents me with this village is that it's kind of thriving. It's safe. It has protocols. It has all this stuff. You're telling me the kid doesn't know like what a doctor is or a doctor can do. Like they never talk about the concept of a doctor, but that community has to have a doctor. People are breaking bones or hurting themselves or getting sick.
But there's a conversation with Aaron Taylor Johnson where he says, we haven't had a doctor here in years.
I know it's odd. Like no one's doing that role.
Yeah.
Again, this is a minor thing.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds. What I'm saying is what got me was not the illogical thing that a child would do to try to save their mother. It was the way that information was disseminated to me in and around the world that was built that did not feel cohesive enough for the expediency that the plot just twists.
I actually can appreciate that, which is that the thing that I thought about was that how quickly, Spike basically makes the decision very quickly. I think there is quite a bit of information about the Doctor kind of disseminated through. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson actually tells a story about how they went over the hill and saw him lining up bodies. And for him, while he might be a doctor, he might also be a madman. And it is that kind of, the way I read it was Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, Colonel Kurtz up the river, lost his mind kind of thing. And we don't want no part of that. So I kind of, I understood what it was. And then for Spike, the idea that, well, the world that I know and understand within this village isn't necessarily the full world that I think is out there, and there's an opportunity here to save my mother. And so he goes. The thing that I was thinking that I do agree with you was the expediency with which Spike gets back out there with his mother, who's like seemingly bedridden up until this point, but he kind of like walks her over the causeway, and suddenly she's like, oh, where are we? And the only thing I can sort of say there that kind of worked for me is that there's just a sort of almost blistering expediency to the whole thing. Like it's just, we're just moving on as quickly as possible. And I was like, with the aesthetic of the whole world, with the fact that it's not going to move, like with the sort of interspersing of unusual footage that we'd seen before, I was like, okay, that's just how we're going to move at this point. And like you kind of said, I was just kind of on board. And even though I was like, this is a foolish decision, young man. You should not go out there without any experience. You've just shown how you're not quite equipped for this world. But the story wants us to go there, and I kind of was like, okay, that's where we're going.
And again, I think it is an excellent plot point. I think the actions that the story is telling is correct and interesting.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the world building, and in some cases the script, lets that happen in a way that kept me on board 100% of the time. Again, sure. I will reiterate. I think from here on out, I have almost exclusively positive things to say about this movie.
Well, I actually found the introduction of the Norwegian Swedish
that was weird.
The soldier, I was just like, oh wait, so we're doing a whole soldier plot line here, and there was a part of me that was going like, what is happening here? But again, I just got into like a rhythm with this movie of going, this movie is just taking some swings and some turns here. Like they end up going into a gas station which has got this sort of fumes in it.
The CG fumes.
Yeah, and then that soldier appears, lights it all on fire, and they dip their heads and they manage to survive where every other zombie gets killed. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing that. But I was on board with it.
Yeah, you could have actually, I think it would have been much cleaner if that guy just came out of nowhere, and then it could have had a really cool thing with like Spike not ever seeing someone who is like that. Spike's probably never seen a machine gun. Spike seemed pretty cool with this dude that literally would be, for someone his age in that community, would be like a space alien.
Yeah, but he does. I think he acknowledges that as well, though. He's like, when he pulls out his phone, he's like, "What is that?" And, they have constant conversations about like,
there's
you
a
don't know what this
conversation.
is. Yeah.
There's a conversation, but he's not trepidatious about this person / thing to him at all. Like it's just like, oh, you're here now, cool.
This is the world he grew up in. He's only
no, it's not. That's distinctly not the world he grew up in.
But he grew up in a world where like there are zombies and monsters around, and there's an acknowledgement that something happened many years ago.
But he's used to those, and this is like a what? Like I don't know. That felt odd to me. I wish they introduced the soldier. Basically, right as like it would be cool if he just showed up and then we got a little bit of a flashback as how he got there when he was telling his story. Because you're right, when it cuts to like that 4 minutes of the soldiers going in and like whatever, I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, what is the story? Yeah.
Cool.
I just didn't know where we were at that point. But I actually quite enjoyed it. I liked that there was a moment of brevity, a moment of lightness here, where Spike looks at a photo of his girlfriend and he's like, "What's wrong with her? What's wrong with her lips?"
Oh yeah, there's someone who's allergic to shellfish in the village.
Yeah, she's got the same problem.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy that. But then this is where then around this point when the alphas start appearing, or we'd seen an alpha before this, but now there is a pregnant rage monster or rage virus infect. Oh, I'm going to try and figure out my vernacular here. Pregnant rage infected, right? Would that be the correct thing? And so there is a pregnant rage infected, and you're like, well, how did that happen? Was she pregnant when she was infected with the rage virus, or as we kind of come to presume later on, she was the infected have begun forming a hierarchy of society where there is an alpha who has the ability, who then impregnates her, right?
Who the hell knows, man? I would go that direction based solely on dong, like how much but also male genitalia you see in this movie. I think that's hinting at, like, especially with the vernacular, that like, yes, they are able to somehow breed.
Yeah,
but at the same time, which actually, if that is the case, it makes it incredibly darker because the babies aren't infected. Which is wild. That would mean that if there was any outside of this moment where Spike's mom manages to save this child in a very moving scene, I thought.
Also moves very strangely, which is that she approaches a rage-infected woman giving birth and puts her hands up, and there seems to be an acknowledgement, perhaps between mothers, of like what to do in this scenario.
Loved it. I loved it.
It was great, but it was
so
like,
cool.
Wow, so these are some swings.
And it's a dark thought. Like all the other babies that are born from this, like, what's happening? Do they eat them? Like, I don't know.
Or
anyway,
do they raise them? Who knows? And what
is it a goal? Is it a fat bastard scenario?
Oh my God.
I just rewatched the second Austin Powers. Spoiler alert, it's not good.
Okay. All right. But the thing that I think is interesting that I took away there is that they're like the rage infected were seemingly forming more to resemble early Neanderthals.
Sure.
Right. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. This is the origin of species. And this is like perhaps in like 10 to 20 more evolutions, they might start appearing more human as they start, mating and breeding and having children that aren't infected with rage. But although I don't know what that childhood would look like. But I think that was really fascinating. And then this is the introduction of Ray Fiennes' character, who is just this like soothing salve on the whole scenario. He's just like, I love the way he speaks, and I love the way, like, how calm he is about all of this, despite the fact he's making this like skeleton towers. Like he's making art in the middle of all of this.
I loved that the way that we meet Doc here is he shoots the alpha with the blow dart that like gets him like docile.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah, this is Frenchie or whatever he named him. I forget what he was, but he's like, yeah, he's
Samson,
around here. Like
Samson.
And he's like, he's around here a lot. We don't get close for obvious reasons or whatever. And he's like treating it like a game, like a big game zookeeper kind of guy. And I thought that was such a cool way to introduce him and explain how he has survived out here by himself.
Yeah. And then built and crafted an enormous work of art.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. So it's interesting because before that, we are literally seeing Samson amongst other alphas. Apparently, they played too much Mortal Kombat and really know how to nail Sub-Zero's main fatality, which is ripping the skull out while the spine is still attached.
Love it.
And that happens a lot. And they take the head of the soldier who Samson just did that to, and give it to the doc, and the doc treats it in his cool mechanical thing where he like puts an iron lung basically over a fire to clean the meat off the bones, and he makes these giant bone towers. Now, if you haven't seen this movie and you're listening all the way to here, you should probably go see the movie. But the advertising, the promotional campaign for this film featured this bone statuary art, skull towers, bone pillars, everything very heavily.
Yeah.
And I had to say that was the part of the promotional campaign that I was the least interested in, because it's presented in a trope that we are used to from The Walking Dead or from a litany of other zombie things, where it's like, oh, there's crazies, there's raiders, they're doing these weird things. It's Blair Witchy. It's like, ooh, what could it be? And it turns out that this is just a phenomenal treatise on the importance of death and what it means. And like Ray Fiennes' character goes on to say, like, these are all people that like they had thoughts, and those eye sockets saw, and those jaws spoke words, and like just because they're dead doesn't mean that those things didn't happen. And he wants to like basically Spike says, "What is that?" And Ray Fiennes' character gets emotional. He's like, "I've been waiting 13 years for someone to ask me that question. Let me give you my entire treatise on death right now." And it was so lovely to have that unexpected twist in this movie. Like
it has nothing to do with the rage monster. It has nothing to do with zombies, which we don't say.
Well, actually, it doesn't, but it is also the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
It is the other side of a coin. And I think in a franchise like this, that, to be perfectly honest, in the first one and really this one, like flips a lot of commonalities and ideas about these kind of movies on its head or on their head. It was such a welcome tone shift and something I was not expecting. And now I deeply appreciate how even the marketing played me, because I got to have a really wonderful experience from something that I was expecting to be like, oh, good, Raiders or whatever.
Well, whatever. What's up with Colonel Kurtz here? Like, what is the weird, monstrous thing that he's been working on for the last 13 years?
Yeah,
and
there's no twist like that. It's just he has a real good vibe with death. Yeah. And this is the other thing. This is what I love about the roundabout way. So they bring the mom there, and she apparently, I mean, he even says, he's like, I don't have equipment. I'm not exactly sure, but based on X, Y, and Z, you definitely have a late stage cancer.
I think you have cancer. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, you're going to probably die pretty soon.
Yeah.
And so then you can see they have sort of a silent agreement, and he has to drug Spike to let it happen, etc. But in a way, because at very first I kind of reacted like Spike did, like, oh, you have to be able to help her. What the hell? Like, I did this whole thing. I don't know this way. And the treatise of there are many different kinds of death, or death can mean different things, or death is sort of the process, all that jazz, makes it so truly in this world that they live in, the only way to even remotely save her, the mother, in any sort of capacity was truly to find this doctor. Not to save her in the life that she had, not to have her accidentally get turned into a rage monster, but to accept and move on with death as a process, which intrinsically the rage monsters seem to not.
Yeah.
Like, and so it was just like, oh, so like Spike's journey did have reason. Like it didn't work out the way he wanted, but it worked out the best way that was possible in this world. And it was so moving and lovely. I don't know. I dug the hell out of it.
It had nothing to do with like the thing we were talking about before in terms of like explaining the zombies or the rage infected and the alphas. It had nothing to do with that. It actually just had to do with a real emotional core, which is something that, you know, like, Dr. Kelson says, it's just that you must remember to love, you know, like memento amore, you must remember love. And then, you know, this other idea in there is that sometimes the best kind of death is one that's done with kindness.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what this is. And, you know, it's the antithesis of what the rage virus
that's
does.
why I think it makes perfect sense and ties perfectly into this movie.
But it's not like explaining any of the science. It's not like doing any of that. It's just...
It's the exact opposite of saying Spike's name 100 times. It is showing you rather than telling you, and you get the emotional punch and feeling, and that is when the movie washed over me.
It's such an unusual turn, right? Like it's such a... Wait,
it's refreshing.
This movie's doing what now?
Refreshing.
And it really works. It really and you know, like there's a part of me that is a little bit hesitant about the idea of this expanding out into a franchise, which is I guess what we can talk about now.
We'll talk about it.
Expanding out into a bigger franchise, because I think the reason why I kind of think that this is the best of the three at this point is that it has that kind of world building depth to it, which is that, you know, at some point, it is not about the rage. It is about the people left behind, and they're not even their struggle, but their capacity to be human in the face of the monstrous world that they live in. And the idea that this expands out into a franchise is the one thing that I kind of like the least about it.
Yeah.
And we come to the end. Spike returns past the causeway to the village, and he decides to return the baby. And he says, in a sort of beautiful note, the parents of this baby were infected, but it is not. Please treat it with kindness. And then he decides to go out on his way to explore more of the world. I think he's just realized that the village is not for him. And there's a beautiful callback to the opening of 28 Days Later with the sort of I forget who wrote the piece of music, but the really big prog rock synth score that's opens up that film, and then we're introduced to the strangest set of characters in this film, who are finally who we've been hinted at throughout the entire film, the Jimmies or Jimmy.
Have we been hinted at?
Yeah, because Jimmy was the boy at the beginning.
Was the boy
when they come across a hung body that has been hung upside down with a bag over its head, and the word Jimmy is written on that person's body.
I couldn't read the word.
It said Jimmy.
Okay, I only got MMY.
And then I remembered that Jimmy was the kid at the beginning, and because there part of me was like, I presumed that Aaron Taylor Johnson was Jimmy, the kid. I did at the beginning. But then, as we kind of learned, it wasn't. And then later on, there's a piece of graffiti up on a church saying they'll be back in the clouds, and then scribbled next to it is Jimmy. Yeah. And so then we meet the Jimmy gang, which is the most incongruous part about this, which is that they're dressed in kind of tracksuits. They have long blonde hair. There is something very specifically cultural to this, which is that they resemble Jimmy Savile, the child performer. Do you know who Jimmy Savile is?
No.
Jimmy Savile is it's sort of weird to say it like this. There's a little bit of controversy about this as well. Jimmy Savile was a children's performer. Maybe the closest thing I can think to is sort of like a Mr. Rogers type character in British television. Been around for a very long time. Really important culturally to British kids and British television stars growing up. It was later discovered that he had been sexually abusing kids later in life, and had been using a lot of his charities to do so. So really rightfully publicly disgraced figure. And so to have the sort of group of gang marauders that are left behind resemble Jimmy Savile, I think he even says one of their catchphrases, is a really provocative statement. It's also visually incongruous. The rest of the movie has been sort of these muted dark tones with dirt and grime everywhere. And then these guys pop out and do like a Power Rangers sequence.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was a Power Rangers sequence. Yeah, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah. It's very, very
dokey.
It's very unusual. But also I don't know if you clocked this as well. The actor who plays Jimmy is Jack O'Connell, who played Remick from Sinners.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It did not look like him at all.
Yeah, no, well, because he's covered in this thing, and I was like, oh man, Remick's everywhere.
That's so funny.
But so it's a provocative statement. It is incongruous. It looks weird. You don't know what to make of it. And I am sort of unsure of what this is for a sequel or what have you. I don't, I tend to not care about those kinds of things.
There was both audible groans and claps sort of at the end when it ended where it did. Yeah. And so I think this is going to be quite divisive. I don't love it as an ending I think it's because I don't give a fuck about them. Like they're played as a like you're seeing the hints, and now that you're laying them out, I'm like, oh, that's very cool. But like they, for the majority of audiences, myself included, I think they come off as kind of slapsticky by the end.
Yeah.
And I'm 100%. Like, well, then why the build? Like, I'm not excited to see where this story goes. I think that's where I really enjoy this movie. I think it is a phenomenal treatise on the zombie genre in a whole, like as a whole, and what, like, while being in one, how you can also be counter to it. I think it does things that these kind of movies have never done, and it does it with a level of skill that is insane, that despite my myriad of small problems, all those wash away by the end.
Yeah.
And I kind of want this to be it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I come out on it. Is it would be great if this was it. And I guess, Nia DaCosta, who'd done Candyman and The Marvels, I'm hoping, she's a great director, and I'm hoping that maybe this is a franchise that she can kind of really take the reins of. And one thing about Danny Boyle that I've really long appreciated, I can't remember which Blu-ray this was the case in. But if you ever listen to Danny Boyle's commentaries, and he's really, he sounds like a very kind man.
Sure.
And the reason I say that is that on one of the DVDs or one of the Blu-rays that he produced, a couple of the PAs or people that worked on the film had made short films during the process of making whatever movie it was that they were working on, whether it was Slumdog or 127 Hours or whatever, I can't remember. And he persuaded the production companies to put those short films on the Blu-rays, and then he talks to the filmmakers about them.
That's cool.
And it's like, it speaks to kind of like a sort of gentle curiosity that he has. And I recall one of these films really felt experimental, like it was just like raindrops watching traffic. But he seemed genuinely excited by it, and like really happy that people were making things in and around the production that he was making.
Yeah.
And so my point to that is that I hopefully him as a steward of this franchise will provide someone like Nia DaCosta, who's kind of been burnt by, the Marvels. She did not have a good time working on those films. There were lots of stories about her tenure on that film. Hopefully we'll kind of give her some stewardship to kind of really bring to the table something interesting here.
Yeah.
So, that's the part I'm hopeful about. I wasn't, like when those characters appeared, I was like, at this point I was just like, this is a really weird movie. There's some really weird turns going on here.
But again, I'll take the weird. I like
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I think if you enjoy subversive zombie cinema, I think you would enjoy it too. I think it has a lot to offer and say. And I don't know. I was very excited to talk about this with you, Shahir, because I love it when a movie leaves me with a lot to say about it, and this movie definitely does. And I think more in the positive column than the negative. It was not what I expected it to be, but it was more than I wanted it to be, I guess would be kind of the
I think that's a really perfect summary of how to read this film, which is that, I'm concerned that it's not for everyone, but I was like, I genuinely got a thrill from and the way I would also equate it is that moment in Sinners when music transcends time, and it's done in a really formal way in that particular film, but we see how music transcends even the boundaries of what the story is doing in that movie, the shot. I kind of felt the same way about many moments in this movie, which was that, like, again, Danny Boyle just experiments, and he's using the language of film in a way that is really unusual here. And it's at times often incongruous, but there's a kind of like wild finesse to this all. And the guy's won a Best Picture already. I think there's a genuine curiosity about like how to make films and an experimental way to sort of think about filmmaking that he does here that only he can do. And for that, it's exhilarating. I really genuinely love this movie.
Yeah. Well, this has been the only podcast about the film 28 years later. Shahir, when you are not judging films based on the size of zombie penises, where can folks find you?
You can find me measuring all things and being disappointed at my website, www.suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are filming all parts of your daily life with an iPhone, where can people find you?
You can smash that like button and hit that bell. Make sure to turn on all the notifications. That's how it works, kids, over at, actually, weirdly, at my site's YouTube, extra history and extra credits over there. Please go check out all this stuff. By the time this comes out, I think Tuskegee Airmen will be out. I'm not quite sure. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
We're as we mentioned previously, we are going into sort of vacation mode right now. Not to say that we'll be stopping at all, but that means we just record we record episodes sometimes out of order early. We banked 3 episodes kind of within a very short period of time right now. I'll be away for a couple of weeks, so there'll be a couple of episodes that I won't be on, but I'm sure you'll have fantastic guests for those. Superman, I'm excited to see that in New Zealand at the Embassy Theatre, where I'm sure it'll be playing. I don't know what to make of that movie. I hope it's weird. I hope it's strange.
I hope it's weird too. I think at this point for me, James Gunn matches James Cameron in that he doesn't miss. I said for me, I prefaced it, I'm like, yeah, man.
I'm not saying that he doesn't miss. I think everything that he's done recently hasn't missed. I think he's capable of a miss, is what I'm saying.
I don't know what James Cameron could be capable of a miss.
He just doesn't seem to be. He just doesn't do it. Yeah.
I think we're gonna actually try to get out. We'll see how motivated I can be. I think we're gonna try to get out the Superman review and discussion the weekend Superman releases. I think I can get it done. But if not, you can get it the next week. Same with Jurassic World. And I might even try to get a bonus episode if I can get it in. I have a friend who really wants to talk about F1. So. There's a lot of movies coming up. I might do a triple threat day one of these days again, which is one of my favorite things to do.
I'm excited to see F1. It's Joseph Kosinski basically doing Top Gun for Formula One. And Formula One is a world that I really don't know much about. And so I'm really curious.
You know who knows a lot about it? Sammy's husband, Joe. We're talking like friends, not on a podcast right now, but you've met him once or twice, and he knows a lot. Like we were out, he's told me about it, and I still don't understand, but I always like talking to people that are passionate about a sport or a hobby or a pastime that I know nothing about, and you just get the joy but none of the information.
It should be fun. That film is releasing on Apple TV, I think, concurrently with or maybe it's a week in, week out.
Interesting,
because it's an Apple TV production.
Okay.
I think it's Apple TV's biggest production at this point.
Wow.
So it'll be curious to see how that plays out.
We'll see how it goes, but until then, we'll talk at you next week.
What we'll talk about, who knows?
You don't know. Surprise.
Don't know.
All right. Yeah, none of us know. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.